Hello, welcome to the Courage in Cannabis Speakers Bureau. My name is Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams. I am a family physician, cannabis specialist, empowerment coach, and best-selling author of Courage in Cannabis. I'm excited to have you here with us today to celebrate the launch of our widely anticipated Volume 2, Courage in Cannabis, The Triumphant Stories. So a little bit about how we got to this point. So Courage in Cannabis is a award-winning book series that we've created because in Ohio, when we started getting into the cannabis space, there was so much talk about all sorts of activist issues, different things that are going on as far as home grow or social media issues and what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, social equity, all different aspects. And when I started seeing patients in 2018, I knew that there was more that needed to be shared. One of my first patients, as I handed over their card, said to me with tears in his eyes, "I'm taking this card. I'm taking it home to my son that's 10 years old. And I'm going to tell him that I'm not just a pothead, I'm a patient." I had a woman come to me and said, "I'm taking this card and I'm going back to church." I realized that there was so much more going on with what patients were experiencing as they entered into this medical space, let alone these patients coming back and sharing how cannabis helped and worked for them. I knew I needed to document these stories, share them. And the fact of the matter is, if we don't make an effort to look at where we got, how we got here, that history always repeats itself. So when this initially started, I actually started writing these stories down. I created a book called The Cannabis Chronicles, a marijuana physician perspective. I had someone that was interested in publishing it, and I had gathered stories from my patients over about a year's period that I thought would be helpful to others. But in that moment, I stopped. I felt that I was taking something away from the patients that I served. I felt that I was taking something away from the patients I had always served. I spent nearly 20 years at the Cleveland Clinic in family medicine and occupational medicine. So it was really time for me to look at where we were about this unique community that I had gravitated to, that I felt that I found my tribe and belonging to, and see what actually could be a better option for them. So at that period of time, COVID was on its way. And like most people during COVID, we all were doing something a little bit different. And so I was in a space where I took a step back and learned about anthologies, something that was really popular in the South at that time. I met with Dawn Leek, who was doing a book at the time and has remained my mentor and a mentor of the Courage in Cannabis series, and did a book with her, learned about the anthology process, and then realized that this is what we needed to do, that there was something special about the cannabis plant, and it would be even more impactful if people could write their own stories and benefit from them. So at the end of 2021, we launched and released Courage in Cannabis Volume 1. It was a collection of 18 stories that shared how cannabis and CBD had changed people's lives. We were a #1 bestseller on Amazon at that time, and realized that this wasn't one book that we needed to do, but truly a series, because there were so many stories out there that needed to be shared. So during this process, we pushed this book, we engaged with these people, and that book got into the hands of legislators, churchgoers. It got into the hands of celebrities, of parents, people that were trying to understand what this new phenomenon, as far as they were concerned, was and how best to deal with this and learn about it. People felt that they had a better understanding of their children and grandchildren because of the stories shared in this book. It was doctors and lawyers, caregivers and legacy market. It was educators and entrepreneurs all coming together, sharing what this plant could mean, particularly during a time where so many people had discounted cannabis because they looked at it as not having enough research. But the fact of the matter is, all research is individual stories that are collected and made into data. So here we are with Courage in Cannabis 2, an opportunity to share again what cannabis and CBD can mean to others. This time, we went from 18 authors all the way to 39. And with this, we have sparks, people that have a voice in the cannabis space already that offer their testimonies and aspects of their experience in the cannabis space. We have an educational section that allows people to understand a little bit more about what cannabis means in a more opinion editorial aspect. We bring these people together and with the help of our sponsors, provide a voice and provide for people the power of the stories. So I'm excited to present to you today these amazing authors that have chosen to go on even a further journey today. They've decided that they wanted to know more about how they could represent themselves and represent their story in a meaningful way. So today I bring you our authors, 9 selective people that have chosen to share their stories in segments today that would be meaningful and hopefully not only touch your heart, but touch your mind. As you share in their experiences today, keep in mind that we're talking about a plant that is unique in its essence, that it is recreational as it is medicinal. It is relieving of pain as it is of elevating emotions. We have an opportunity in this space now to be able to do business differently, to do medicine differently, to do relationships and recreational social engagement differently, if we choose to do it in the face of collaboration. I easily could have published the Cannabis Chronicles all on my own, but there is not only power in the stories, there's power in the people coming together. So please take this time today and really settle in as you hear from 9 of our authors share their experiences with this amazing plant.
Imagine one day you're doing your job just like any other day, working as a pediatric nurse, and all of a sudden you're called in for a routine vaccine for a child that's being very uncooperative, and he hits you in the head. He hits you in the head so hard that you put a dent in the plaster wall behind you, and then you bounce back into his head. That was the last day I worked as a pediatric nurse, and that was 10/11/2016. I suffered what is known as a concussion or traumatic brain injury. This changed my life in a way that I never anticipated or expected. I became literally a shell of the human I was. I was no longer that bubbly, fun pediatric nurse that enjoyed everybody, but I became so depressed, so despondent. I was put on pharmaceutical after pharmaceutical, and I literally could no longer function because of the side effects of the pharmaceuticals. I then was told there's nothing wrong with me because the scans didn't show that. I went from being a credible medical professional to now the patient. Changing sides of that table absolutely sucked. And I can tell you without a doubt that I was suicidal. My husband gets a call from my psychologist and says, "Are you aware that Nikki's suicidal?" And he said, "No, what are you talking about? She's got a plan and we need to talk, and I want you at the next session." Together, I had to write a contract that I would not kill myself. We ended up going to Las Vegas. We went to Las Vegas because in my past, I was a dealer. I loved being a casino gamer and had fun at the slots. And again, I was this bubbly human that was just so fun. And he booked this trip in desperation. We went on that trip. I spent 3 days in a corner, huddled in a ball. And then all of a sudden, I said, I'm done. I'm just done. I'm a burden to my family. I'm a burden to everyone. I can't do it. I can't honor that contract. I dragged the table over to the balcony edge of the Cosmopolitan Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. And just as I'm about to jump, a billboard advertising, get your medical marijuana card in Nevada today, came by. It came by a second time, and it was almost like the universe was saying, you need to try this. And I laughed at it because I'm part of the whole war on drugs. I was the DARE graduate with honors. I didn't believe cannabis was medicine. I was a nurse. If you would have told me your child was taking cannabis for seizures, I would have called Child Protective Services and you would no longer have your child. That's how strongly I felt about it. The plant gave me hope that day because for the first time I got my card, I went to a dispensary, and then I ended up using cannabis. I used gummies the first night and I was able to sleep for the first time in months. I was able to come out of that hotel room after I smoked that first joint. Friends, cannabis is medicine. I don't use it to get high. I use it to get well. My name is Nikki Lawley. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and this is my story. Cannabis has been stigmatized and demonized for decades. And it's sort of like anything in politics and media, how things get twisted. I've never been the conspiracy theorist or, you told me pharma was buying the medical system. I wasn't a buyer into that. I really didn't have any idea. I do now. I completely understand why the war on drugs happened. I don't understand the mentality behind it other than the results of it. The war on drugs harmed so many people, so many families, and it literally destroyed a perfectly amazing plant medicine that could change the world. And it changed my world. Maybe I can't change the world for everyone, but I sure can change it perhaps for one person today. If they hear my story and it gives them a tiny bit of hope, then I've done my job. Just yesterday, I got a call from a woman who brought me back to where I was that day in Las Vegas. She called me hysterically crying. She had found me online when she Googled cannabis and concussions. And she said, you're the only one that I possibly have found that seems to relate to what I'm saying. And she called me just sobbing because she was so defeated. She had tried so many things and so many therapies and couldn't get doctors to listen to her. She was being gaslit left and right, just like I was. I was gaslit to the point of it was put in my medical chart that I was a drug seeker. I'm not a drug seeker, friends. I'm a drug unseeker. I didn't want to take the pills. I didn't want to do the procedures and the constant influx of Botox and chemicals in my body. I just wanted to feel better. And no one could understand how this 40-something-year-old woman could possibly still have symptoms of a concussion, of a blow to the head. I'm not a football player, but I was tackled like one. I found hope in the plant that day, and then I returned to New York State, where cannabis and chronic pain were not considered an approved condition, although we had a medical program in New York State. So I found cannabis in Canada. I became a medical cannabis refugee in Canada. Canada is where my safe spot was, and it's where I found relief, and I learned all about the plant. I learned that there's so many great components of the plant that you literally can treat so many different conditions. And this is not taught about in nursing school. This is not taught about in medical school. No one knows the way the patients do. At the end of the day, patients are the experts because we're the ones living with the condition. We're the ones, just because you have the schooling and the education doesn't mean that you are the only expert. So many physicians don't listen to patients. So many nurses don't listen to patients. I was kind of different. I really tried to have empathy. But if nothing else, this brain injury has taught me empathy. It's taught me that I, just by being me, can change minds, hearts, and lives because I've lived this. I've lived this. I know my story. When Dr. Bridget asked me to be part of the Courage in Cannabis, I was like, absolutely. Because why? Because our stories need to be told. Real world evidence is so much more important than a rat running through a maze in clinical trials. Real world evidence talks to other patients about what symptoms they're suffering from. And you can dial in your medicine by literally smelling your medicine. I'm a true believer in terpenes. Terpenes are what gives the plant its smell, its flavor, and its medicinal effects. I've learned so much about terpenes, and I literally shop by terpenes. It's not just about THC and CBD. It's about the whole plant and how it works together for the greater good. I don't have all the answers, friends, but I'm doing the very best I can with what I have right now. And I encourage you to do your own research. I encourage you to read these stories and understand the power of the plant. The plant is power. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for being part of this journey with me, because together we are so much stronger. Collaboration, friends, over competition. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and please feel free to get your ebook today. I'm so excited it's released for this just select group of people. And let's build the bridge together, and let's remove the stigma. Cannabis connects my dots.
2016, my morphine pump had some major complications, which led to 4 surgeries back to back from August 2016 through December 2016. No clear diagnosis, unanswered questions, 16 plus medications, numerous appointments, surgeries, injections, with little to no hope. My life was so slowly slipping away. My name is Candy Flores, the Texas girl, as some of my out-of-state friends call me. Cannabis helped me reclaim my life January 2017. Cannabis was not something I was looking for or I wanted. It turned out it was something my health needed. I fell in love with our plant, and I am so grateful to its healing benefits and the best quality of life that it has given me to be a better me. I'm actually a better mother, a better daughter, wife, a better individual. This is not easy, of course, because the stigma is still there. At the same time, its healing benefits have actually given me the courage to move forward and reveal the mask and help others through this healing journey. Imagine if those of you who have ever taken morphine, it's very addictive. I was addicted to morphine and opiates without even knowing, and with little to no hope. Cannabis saved me. I no longer use a cane, a walker, and I have the best quality of life that I could have had. I wish I would have been introduced to cannabis sooner and been educated a lot sooner. now I continue my journey helping others understand that cannabis shouldn't be our last resort. It should actually be our first resort. If I could save people from going through and wasting all the years in my life that I did, it's a big impact for me to be able to do that for others. Of course, it took a whole year to come out of the closet and show others and talk about it, but now I am where I am today, and I'm glad that I can stand tall and help people understand the benefits and just move forward. I am honored to be encouraging cannabis, both volume 1 and volume 2. And please reach out to us if there's anything we can do. Just know that you're not alone and the support is here. Just need to step out of your comfort zone and help us end the stigma. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandy Moore, and I am the CEO and founder for Hempbox Etc., where we are Georgia's first and only modified shipping container hemp food truck, where we're on a mission to educate Georgians on CBD and hemp health and wellness. Cannabis, don't box me in. I am an unsuspecting cannabis stigma breaker. It is within me that I hope to change the mindset surrounding plant medicine, one person at a time. As a U.S. Army veteran, law enforcement officer with non-visible disabilities, these two identifiers alone, people expect me to look a certain way. However, as your cannabis stigma breaker, I'm on a mission to teach, learn, and help others discover their journey with plant medicine, and that it is your own. My life here in 3 decades as a United States Army soldier, serving in this tour of Operation Iraqi Freedom, at the very young age of 17 years old, in a different country, with as much fear as the natives had of us, we had of them. This period in my life would have never been the same without guidance and counseling and said medications that I was forced to take. The next segment and decade of my life continued to have that same effect that I experienced as a law enforcement officer. And that next decade really posed a bit of spark, a bit of excitement, a bit of relief, a bit of change. In my life, I would have never expected or believed that I would be a U.S. Army veteran, to a former police officer, and now a cannabis advocate. So after serving in Iraq as a 25-year-old, I was new to that environment and that place and it onset of the depression that I first experienced. It triggered me, excuse me, it triggered me, and I did not know what PTSD was. But I soon discovered that many of my comrades would return stateside with this same invisible disability. And soon There were night terrors, moments of anxiety, and just not knowing where I was. I realized that I could not handle all of these challenges on my own. And as I stated earlier, I sought guidance and I sought counseling from the Department of Mental Health. And you can imagine at that time, there were no other resources but the pharmaceuticals that they were prescribing us. But I realized that I was having these adverse side effects, not only because of the condition, but it was also due to the medication. I now had to figure out, how would I integrate myself back into work with these said conditions? So I decided to find the pathway of something that was similar to the camaraderie of what I had, similar to the uniform of what I had to wear, and similar to the possibility of being or working autonomously. And I decided to become a police officer. And I wondered, why did all of my fellow service member comrades decide to do the same? And in speaking with our mental health specialist, she said that we had that same link, that something was missing, or in fact, something was there for me. And I decided that something that was there for me was making me feel obsolete. I couldn't decide if the pathway to these both similar career paths was what I needed. And on the age of 46, or at the age of 46, I suffered with this now PTSD after my decision to become paramilitary, a law enforcement officer, still having these challenges with anxiety, insomnia, and depression, now coupled with chronic pain from non-invasive surgeries. But guess what? I had the choice to decide, how would I alleviate all of this pain and this trauma that started over 3 decades ago? How could I find my own relief without compromising the integrity of my job? But as the great Dr. Bridget Williams says, I made the choice to reclaim my wellness. What you see now is just a portion of the medications that I was prescribed. And as a law enforcement officer and as a veteran, we have those similar traumas. And as emergency personnel or emergency response personnel, we have similar traumas as well. Who can you talk to when you get off of work? A spouse, a friend? Will they understand what your day consisted of? Is it okay for you to stay after work and hang out with comrades and drink 6 cases of beer? Or is it better to come home and self-medicate with all of those prescribed medications for the conditions that I've previously listed? Or could it be more simplified with that one plant? I decided to make the choice. Who will advocate for veterans and emergency response personnel? I will do that. I will advocate. I will sacrifice. Maybe with being a veteran, the choice is not always what you want in the beginning. But at some point, you have to decide if this is where you want to take charge of your life. Or do you want someone else to take charge of your medical care? Or do you have the choice within yourself to decide and or work with your physician? You have that right. You have that choice. And there's always going to be someone in such an amazing group of people that I'm working with, an amazing group of people in this book, that someone can help you figure out your pathway into your cannabis and plant medicine journey. Using plant medicine daily helps regulate my mood and my disorders, and it reduces my chronic pain. And I want to be the example of the unboxed person that you will see advocating for you, standing in the bridge for you, and you won't box me in. And this is the only box that you will catch me in, is hemp box. Thank you.
Hello. In preparing for this talk today, I typed into Merriam-Webster's dictionary Cannamom to define it, and it said, "Did you mean cinnamon?" So I had a little more luck with the Urban Dictionary, which defined Cannamoms as passionate mothers advocating for the right and option to utilize cannabis in the care of their own critically ill children. These are the Cannamom OGs, and I am so grateful for them. They fought for access, for safe access for their sick kids, and for lots of other kids in the process. They helped push forward legalization in so many states, and without women like Paige Figge, Miko Hester Perez, and Mariah Barnhart, and many others, we really wouldn't be where we are today with the movement. Now, the way that I often use Cannamom, Cannamomery has really exploded, I would say, in the last several years. And so there's a lot more of us that fit under that umbrella now. The way I often use it, Cannamoms are moms who consciously choose cannabis as medicine, as wellness, or as a way to relax for themselves. But really, Cannamom is all of the above. Women who are advocating for their kids, women who are consuming cannabis themselves. And truly, we come from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all skin colors, many different kinds of beliefs, and yet here we are. And there's a lot more of us than people think. I'll be honest with you. About 7 or 8 years ago, I did not identify as a Cannamom. In fact, I low-key hated it. And I didn't see it as medicine. I didn't understand cannabis at all. And that's because I was misinformed. I'd had limited personal experience without any information in the past. And I had seen my husband's struggles with the plant. I tell this story in my book, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But, it's real. It's difficult to talk about, but it influenced the way I thought about cannabis for a while. But, life takes us in all kinds of weird, strange paths. And my path took me from being a total cannabis skeptic to a writer and someone who was open to their own experience to a true Cannamom advocate and an author. I'm Danielle Simone Brand, author of the book Weed Mom, and I'm a mother of 2, a journalist and a media maker. And my mission is to inspire other mothers to live life intentionally and on their own terms, possibly with a little help from my friend Cannabis. Now, I said a few moments ago that I completely misunderstood cannabis for a while, and that's really no accident. About 100 years of prohibition, the reefer madness era of the 30s and 40s, and then the DARE program that many of us grew up with really equated marijuana with insanity and criminal behavior. I mean, let's be honest, that's what they were saying. If you've ever consumed cannabis, you know this is false, but many of us believed it anyway. And just like as a little side note, I wanted to mention the fact that reefer madness is back to some degree in the media right now. And so take those sensationalist headlines with a grain of salt, just a little bit of advice, because there's a lot of narratives out there about cannabis still. And truly, anti-cannabis propaganda has influenced so many generations, including me, and I admit to that. But as a writer back in about 2017 with cannabis assignments that I didn't even care about yet, but I did soon, I started to read and interview folks and learn. And as I learned, I truly changed my mind. Cannabis is fascinating. It bridges so many areas of interest to me. It bridges health and wellness. I came from a yoga background. It bridges science and research. I came from an academic background as well. It bridges politics and social justice and the environment through things that are important to me, that I pay a lot of attention to. So as I learned, like I said, I changed my mind. Moms that I was interviewing, and I kind of found myself gravitating toward interviewing moms because I was also writing about parenting in my sort of other, beat as a journalist. So I was interviewing a lot of moms who were telling me things like, cannabis has helped my kid immensely who has epilepsy or cancer or autism. Other mothers said that they were using cannabis themselves, maybe because of the stress of caring for an ill child, maybe because they were treating some of their own medical issues. And then a lot of women were telling me they were using cannabis in some kind of middle ground between medical and so-called recreational or adult use, with this vast space of wellness in between. So they were telling me things like, cannabis helps me sleep. Cannabis helps with all kinds of pain. Cannabis helps with mood and mental health. These moms were telling me that they were able to parent more patiently, more creatively, with more presence and more kindness because cannabis was in their lives. They were telling me that they found a way to relax without the huge body load that alcohol has, the side effects that we are all very familiar with alcohol. And they were also telling me that cannabis enabled them time to take for themselves, self-care, whether that was through exercise, meditation, spending time with friends. And all of these different benefits really moved me. So I kept writing. I kept sharing people's stories, learning all I could about the plant and the industry. And along the way, of course, I went on my own cannabis wellness journey. I was living in California, legal state, and my husband and I had to come to a new understanding over time about what it meant for me as cannabis was incorporated more and more in my healthy lifestyle. I truly found that it's wonderful for moms. And, when used responsibly, consumed responsibly, it's truly one of the safest substances we know. Personally, cannabis helps me with pain. I have migraines. It helps me with sleep. I have kids. And it helps me with mental health. I'm alive today, and I think that speaks for itself. Sometimes I joke that cannabis is my anti-anxiety, my antidepressant, my anti-inflammatory, sleep aid, all rolled into one. And it's really not a joke because it's true and it works. And I'm so grateful. And I'm also so grateful for Dr. Bridget. So after writing my book about this conversation, the changing conversations around legal cannabis, guide to the marketplace for moms, I've been on a really fun and wonderful journey speaking about cannamomery. And so I'm so grateful to have been asked to be part of the second edition of Courage in Cannabis by Dr. Bridget Williams, whose mission and values I truly align with. And this community is incredible. Advocates, educators, caregivers, patients, passionate people who are supporting one another, as well as pushing this conversation forward. So love to be a part of it. Now, I want to tell a little story time about a mother in a prohibition state who I spoke with recently. And she was telling me that she uses sleep meds every night to fall asleep. She's a single mom. She has a job as an esthetician during the day. She has to get up and work long hours. And it's vital that she sleeps so she can function and she can care for her daughter. Now, it scares her to take these sleep meds because she said they're powerful. Sometimes she doesn't really remember what happens after she takes them. Sometimes she has that, little nagging fear, like, what if I don't wake up? What if I take too many? What, all the what ifs. And, and that's real. That's something that affects her true quality of life every day as a single mom. Cannabis, she told me, works for her. She can consume cannabis in ways that help her fall asleep and stay asleep and function well without side effects or with fewer side effects, but it's illegal and she's afraid to take that risk. So she's more willing to take the risk, in her words, of potential death, as opposed to being able to utilize a safe, natural, effective plant for her needs. And we all know there's something truly wrong with this picture. So that's one of the many, many reasons that I'm here and I continue to speak about this subject, because moms deserve access to safe and natural medicine. And we also deserve access to ways to tune into our best selves. What are Cannamoms up to today? This is so exciting to me. I love talking about this. So some of us are advocating for sick kids continually in states where access is less than guaranteed. Some of us are nurses, doctors, and healers, helping to really work with the community, heal the community through cannabis medicine. Some of us are still working toward legalization, whether that's medical or adult use. And a lot of Cannamoms, I love seeing that Cannamoms are supporting ethical businesses. They're supporting smaller businesses, women-run and owned businesses, businesses owned by people of color who have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. So, and also environmentally friendly businesses. I love to see it when moms make conscious decisions about where they're putting their money and who they're supporting. Cannamoms are starting businesses geared toward women in cannabis, right? Or geared towards women with cannabis, things like self-care and microdose products and sexual wellness products and so much more. It's really exciting to see. Moms are also raising kids with more empathy and resilience because we feel better. When we feel happier and healthier, everything changes in the home, and I know that to be true. So in closing, I just want to remind us all that cannabis can open our hearts if we let it. I know it as medicine. I know it as wellness. I know it as a community connector and something that can be truly fun too. I believe it is truly past time for full legal access, time to release the stigmas and educate moms, everyone, on responsible, conscious, and ethical cannabis use. Because when moms are healthier and happier and more empowered, we uplift everyone. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. We much appreciate your involvement, and we are looking forward to a wonderful weekend of launching Courage in Cannabis. What I'm going to talk about today is what we call the issues with Issue 1. This is Ohio Issue 1. This presentation reviews the constitutional quandary created by Ohio's one-party rule called a trifecta. Not from Ohio? Beware, a trifecta could come to your state. Ballot issues, constitutional amendments are foundational to cannabis. More than half the 50 states have legalized medical or adult use using this process. As detailed in my Courage in Cannabis story for Book 1, the Ohio Cannabis Rights Amendment represented one of my moments of courage. That's me, on the left, holding the banner on the steps of the Ohio State House. What I learned from this experience is that it was a long, demanding, heartrending, and circuitous journey. These are the current requirements to run a constitutional amendment in Ohio. Over 400,000 signatures of registered voters, 5% of those signatures from 44 of 88 Ohio counties. Right now, it has a cure period of 10 days and a simple majority passage of 50% plus one. Furthermore, what's also required are thousands of volunteers and signature collectors. Legal counsel, an unestimatable amount of money, I'm certain, and a budget of $20 million to pay circulators, lawyers, tabulators, etc. And if you're successful, the state will try to obstruct it. When the legislature fails to act, we the people can take matters into our own hands by fielding ballot initiatives. Such was the case with cannabis, and such is currently the case with reproductive freedom. You're probably aware of the Dobbs decision by the U.S. Supreme Court last year that dismantled the abortion rights conferred to almost 6 million Ohio women. Since then, despite really great public opinion on this issue, like 63% of women, for example, several states have banned the procedure, and Ohio is one of them. It's a 6-week heartbeat bill is tied up in court. Notably, without these rights, Ohio already has a very high mortality rate. A strict abortion ban could increase by 24% maternal mortality and by 15% infant mortality. This is an existential crisis that necessitates a constitutional solution. And that is what the proposed Right to Reproductive Freedom Amendment does now, and it is on the ballot in November in Ohio. Trifecta. Remember this term. Only legislation that conforms with the trifecta ideology can be introduced and passed. In a trifecta state, only one party controls all branches of state government. That means that the minority party, let's say of Ohio voters, commands the state house, principally because of unconstitutional gerrymandering. The legislative districts are drawn unfairly. This has happened repeatedly with issue 1 as the most recent example. Here we have the real argument against issue 1, because nothing moves a legislature to act more quickly than a citizen-led ballot initiative. Issue 1 was very last minute. On the very day of the statutory deadline to enact it, both chambers of the trifecta-dominated Ohio legislature passed identical joint resolutions to field this, what they call a General Assembly-initiated constitutional amendment, and they named it Issue 1. This was transformational, and it breaks with 100-year-old procedures. The Issue 1 passes, as I said earlier, but it changes the percentage passage from a supermajority a simple majority of 50% plus 1 to a supermajority of 60%. And as I said, it mandates signatures from all 88 counties. It eliminates the cure period, which, by the way, signature count actually is kind of an art form. And the Secretary of State will always reject many, many signatures. Now, this was a legally questionable move for Issue 1 because they were trying to purposely circumvent the Reproductive Rights Amendment. And to do so, they really had to override their own law that they passed in 2022, which actually eliminated the special elections because Secretary Rhodes said that they're not good for taxpayers, election officials, voters, or the civic health of our state. But the legal question became, by holding a special election by resolution, as opposed to a bill, bill to override the bill from last year, did the legislature violate its own law? And check this out, the costly taxpayer expense, unbelievable. The price tag for this August special election is $20 million. We're paying for this. That's even though a general election is only 4 months away. And this is all actually based on lies. Yeah, it's based on lies. Despite originally citing a special interest as the primary reason to advance this great cause that they thought they had, Secretary of State LaRose was caught on a hot mic confessing Issue 1 is 100% about keeping a radical pro-abortion amendment out of our Constitution. The left wants to jam it in there this coming November. He's talking about dark money, right? Special interests. Well, speaking of outside special interests, ultra-conservative billionaire Richard Ewing, who actually funded January 6th, made a $4 million PAC contribution to support issue 1. And there's a history of grift, unfortunately, because it isn't enough that we have issue 1. Because just at the same time they're considering issue 1 at the State House, the U.S. Justice Department resolved the largest corporate case in Ohio history against Ohio House Speaker of the House, former House Speaker of the House, Larry Householder. He's a part of the trifecta. He was sentenced to a maximum of 20 years in federal prison for bribery and for his part in a scheme to what? Block statewide ballot initiatives. So let's summarize this. When the General Assembly fails to address popular issues, as it often does, citizens need a way of crafting legislation on our own. So again, these are the issues with issue 1. It was passed at the very last minute, possibly could have been. It was transformational. It breaks with 100-year-old procedures, as I mentioned, as I named earlier. It's legally questionable because, did it override? Did it negate its own bill? Shouldn't they have passed a bill instead of a resolution? It's a costly taxpayer expense. $20 million. Need I say more? Lies. Because the issue isn't about special interests. In La Rosa's words, it's 100% about keeping radical prohibition amendment out of our Constitution. Our Constitution? Isn't it we the people's Constitution? And what's so radical about reducing maternal and infant mortality rates? Special interest dark money, $4 million from a guy who funded January 6th? Really? A history of grift. And speaking of whom, because we're always talking about Larry Householder, and his penalty, as I said, for interfering with a statewide ballot issue. I mean, he got tried on bribery as well, but he got the maximum of 20 years in federal prison. That's how serious this is. So if we ever needed to prove the saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely, look no further than Ohio and issue 1. It takes courage to stand on the State House steps and launch a citizen-led constitutional amendment. It takes courage to endure the slings and arrows that accompany ballot initiatives, as we've seen in issue 1. And it takes courage to speak truth to power repeatedly. And I want to leave you with these words from Albert Einstein. The strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the determination of each citizen to defend it. Only if every single citizen feels duty-bound to do his share in its defense are constitutional rights secure. Thank you.
Mrs. Buffong, your viral load is over 400,000. What does that even mean? I asked my doctor. Your viral load is how much of the HIV virus is in a drop of your blood. Then the doctor explained what an undetectable status is. When the viral load is under 40, the virus is undetectable in your body, meaning that you cannot pass the virus to others through sex or contact with your blood. As I sat in the hospital in March of 2017, while the doctor explained all these new terms to me, I was still in shock of what was happening. I reflected on what led me to this point in my young life. Losing my father and my sister in a fatal car accident on their way to my 25th birthday was still an open wound that had not healed, even though 10 years had gone by. The unimaginable guilt and grief that I did not know how to process led me to use a toxic combination of sex and cocaine that culminated into the disease. The 10 days that I stayed in the hospital under observation, I underwent a kidney biopsy because I was also diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, as the HIV was attacking my kidneys, and of course, the cocaine abuse for years did not help. During those sobering moments in the hospital, I had to first create a list of partners that I had been intimate with within the last 60 days to 6 months, contact my mom and explain to her what was happening, navigate the social security system to register for my disability, and then I had to call my sister on her 27th birthday and tell her where I was and why. My new reality was overwhelming and filled with anxiety and shame. But divine spirit came to me in my dreams, reminding me of what I already knew. Let your food be the medicine, and the medicine be your food. The body can heal itself given the right recipe. With my father being a Rastaman, that helped his prostate cancer using an Ito food plan, cannabis, and noni juice. There was a clear path to healing from my diagnosis as well. I was already familiar with who Dr. Sebi was, Queen Afua, and Dr. Africa, and their work to reverse diseases using diet. Before I left the hospital, I knew I would be able to heal my body using plants as medicine. 5 months later, I was undetectable, and the doctors assured me as long as I stay on the antiretroviral treatment known as ART, then I will live a long life. Well, my question to them was, but what is the long-term damage to the body? They assured me that this version of ART is much better than what it was 20, 30 years ago, when it was called AZT, which we now know killed more people than AIDS actually did. But after my own research, I discovered that the pharmaceutical company that makes the ART that I take now is being sued by patients who had been on their previous versions of their medications for more than a decade. Why? Why were they being sued? Because the pharmaceutical company failed to properly warn those patients on the toxic effects in their liver and kidneys and the reduction of bone density. Once I realized that my medication had only been on the market 2 to 3 years, I was determined not to be Big Pharma's guinea pig. But now that I was undetectable, it was a good starting point for my healing journey. Going plant-based was first. Stop taking unnecessary synthetic drugs was next. My fibroids had just been removed in 2012, but my toxic lifestyle had them back with a vengeance. My first experience towards using plants as medicine was to find a way to manage my severe monthly menstrual pain. My Jamaican friend who had been growing plants for years in Atlanta suggested something called RSO. Rick Simpson oil? I had never heard of it. He snuck it into the hospital for me, and by day 3, I was off their pain medicines. I had the doctors baffled. The next week, with the pain and shock behind me and the concentrated medicine flowing through me, I was ready to take on this new challenge. As my 36th birthday approached in August of that year, I was clear on the mission. My research introduced me to advocacy and led me right into the loving arms of Roz McCarthy, the founder of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. During our first phone call that lasted more than 2 hours, she asked me to launch the organization's chapter for Georgia. Then in March, the following year, I posted my testimony video, announcing to the world my HIV status and asked them to join me on my journey of healing using plants as medicine. In 2019, I was introduced to ayahuasca for the first time. That psychedelic journey allowed me to commune with my dad and sister on the ancestral plane, and I was able to truly move past my grief and guilt. That is when I knew I was not just a cannabis advocate, I had evolved into a plant medicine advocate. Recently, I was introduced to a new platform called Cannalytics. This cannabis effect analysis technology is powered by data-driven algorithms and designed utilizing over 5,000 patient studies. It takes objective data from the genetics of the cannabis plant and leverages that data to match adult therapeutic use with the right cannabis product. This data recognizes that a specific disease or ailment needs more than just a full spectrum treatment. It needs a targeted spectrum approach. The simplest explanation is that for each medical condition, there is a specific cannabis profile that will provide greater relief. Cannalytics matches patients with the genetics that give the user the desired effect. It helps breeders, cultivators, and dispensaries target and provide genetics with the highest medical efficacy, which will improve the cannabis selections available to patients. This new revolutionary technology will give lawmakers the research-backed information they need to stop debating the medical use of cannabis, qualifying the argument that home grow should be allowed for all patients. I am thrilled to announce for the first time publicly that I will be the first HIV patient using this treatment to manage the symptoms of the disease. Replacing my ART with a targeted spectrum cannabis treatment. Wow, what a time to be alive. Back in 2017, I discovered the endocannabinoid system via a TED Talk hosted by the brilliant Dr. Rachel Knox. At the same time, I found research that proved patients with HIV that consumed cannabis had fewer side effects from the disease than those that did not. After that, I dove right into the vortex of learning how to use cannabis as medicine. You see, there's a vital system in our bodies that you did not learn about in school when you learned about the nervous system and the immune system. The endocannabinoid system, also known as the ECS, is a complex network of receptors, enzymes, and endocannabinoids, which are naturally occurring compounds produced by our own bodies. It plays a crucial role in maintaining balance and homeostasis throughout the body. When activated, the ECS regulates various physiological processes such as pain perception, mood, appetite, immune function, and inflammation. It is also the system that interacts with external cannabinoids from the cannabis plant, like THC, CBD, ever heard of them? Producing various effects on the body and the mind. The ECS proves that all vertebrate animals use cannabis as medicine. My mom, who's from Trinidad, a legal resident in this country, and is a strict rule follower to avoid being departed. At the time, she was suffering from debilitating pain when I introduced cannabis to her as an alternative to the pain meds. Within 3 months, she was off the opioids, and just like that, she went back walking 1 day a week back to her 4-day-a-week routine. She also prolonged her knee replacement surgery by 4 years. My mother's life shifted for the better when she removed opioids from her daily regimen and introduced a full spectrum cannabis treatment. What is unfair is that she lived in a state where cannabis was not legal at the time. So her relief came at a cost, which is immeasurable. The risk of going to prison or worse, being deported from the country because you chose a plant over pills. She is why I know this works. This is why I advocate so passionately for this plant, because I have experienced it firsthand. And I witnessed my mother and countless others improve their quality of life. Do you have anyone in your life that you are watching suffer in severe pain? I know what that feels like. I know how disheartening and frustrating it is to witness your loved one in such agony and you can do nothing about it. Well, now you can. Become an advocate by educating and empowering yourself to understand what laws and regulations affect your loved one from having access to cannabis as medicine. Minorities for Medical Marijuana was established more than 7 years ago with over 20 chapters domestically and in 5 countries internationally. We have the resources you need to become that champion. My mission in this lifetime is to use cannabis to heal the nations. My name is Nicole Buffong, and I am in my ancestors' wildest dreams, living my best life as a plant medicine advocate. It has been my honor to be a part of this anthology of stories called Courage in Cannabis. Thank you to Dr. Bridget for your vision and leadership to bring these stories to the mainstream and blessing me with the opportunity to be a published author for the first time. Join me, join us in this movement, fighting for sensible cannabis and hemp policy. Do not wait, do not hesitate. What side of history do you want to be on when we realize that this sacred plant is a gift to mankind and should have never been demonized or criminalized to begin with? Do not be afraid to come out of your cannabis closet. Using cannabis as medicine is nothing to be ashamed of. Become a plant medicine warrior today.
My name is Bronwen, and I am the token teacher. I am a cannabis patient, an educator, and now I am an author. It is a true honor to be here today, and I hope through the vulnerability and the honesty in my story that you can hear why patient rights and protections are so vital and necessary. On October 20th of 2020, my life changed forever. I'm going to back up to July of that year when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's, chronic pain, arthritis, the list goes on and on. And I knew that prescription, they wanted to send me to pain management. And I knew, because I am a recovering alcoholic with a sobriety date of June 16th of 17, I knew that pain management wasn't a thing for me. I was working as an elementary school teacher, a fourth grade teacher to be precise. I had worked in that position for 13 years. I loved my job. I loved the kids. I loved everything that I did. I loved impacting lives. I loved changing the world. And I, fast forward again, got my medical marijuana card, thinking that having a card would protect me. I knew that cannabis would not stimulate my desire for my drug of choice, for alcohol or for benzos, which was my second DOC or drug of choice. I knew that wouldn't happen. And I knew that cannabis would be the best medicine for my needs. I started that school year. It was during the pandemic, during COVID and all of that stuff, and life was crazy. And I had a chiropractor appointment, and I took my dab pen to school with me that day so that I could take it to the chiropractor for an adjustment after school. I proceeded on with my day, had a leak in my purse, and the end result of that was me losing my teaching license until the end of 24. That was October 20th, 2020. I was walked out of my classroom, and I have not returned to the classroom since. What I've chosen to do instead is to lead with courage and to show the tenacity that my mother taught me to have. And that's just keep going. You can't stop. And I chose, if you can't beat them, join them. And I worked in the medical marijuana industry. I worked at a cannabis cultivation facility, and I'm trying to get away from using the M word. I'm sorry, a cannabis facility. And I worked there making edibles and flower packaging. And while working there, I had the opportunity to be at a cannabis event. And my sponsor for this story, Dustin Cava, saw me and was convinced that the world needed to hear my story. So here I am, and I've had the chance to write it in a book, and now I have the chance to share it with you. And I have the chance to read so many other amazing stories, which is incredible. After hearing this showcase and everything that's going to be in the book, I can't wait to buy my copy. I haven't read it yet either. So I lose my license. I meet Dustin. Dustin says, the world needs to hear your story, Bronwen. So I'm like, okay, here I am. The world's going to hear my story. And I meet Dr. Bridget Williams, and she's like, oh yeah, your story needs to be in here. And this whole time I feel like an imposter. And this community has led me to believe that I am not an imposter. I've been put exactly where I belong. And I'm doing and learning all of the things that I should be. And if nothing else, this is the beginning of my journey of understanding how necessary patient rights and protections really are. So here I am starting my journey. I came out of my cannabis closet. I'm no longer an educator. I'm working in the promotional products industry now because I did leave the processing and cultivation facility that I was in. I believe I belong in an education role and not locked inside all day long. So here I am pursuing my dreams, and things may not always go the way that you think. And Brene Brown has taught me something very, very, very important. And the thing that she has taught me, and I am going to leave you with this, I told people before this show that it may not be my best presentation, but it is true and honest and genuine and from my heart. And I hope you know that courage is important, and it is important to get all of our stories out there, that people need to hear the things that people lose. I lost a career that I still owe thousands of dollars on in student loans, you know? So I lost my career. I lost everything, but I've gained so much more. So if I leave you with this, Brene Brown, vulnerability is not about winning. It is not about losing. It's having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. Thank you for being here, and pick up your copy today.
In 2014, my family appeared on the Dr. Phil show. The beginning of the show was pretty factual. The middle of the show was pretty much for ratings. And by the end of the show, Dr. Phil looked me in the eyes and told me that I would not be able to parent my son in the next 2 years. My name is Amie Carter, and I am known in my community as the mother who didn't give up. My journey started in 2006, when my son was born. And shortly after that, he had seizures. And at 2.5, he got a diagnosis of autism, ADHD, and oppositional defiant disorder from 2 different neurologists, which set me on a journey of trying to help him navigate his way through this world. And in, 2010, I think it was, I started with Inspiring Hearts for Autism, and I also served on the board for the National Alliance of Mental Illness. I kind of jumped in and learned everything I could and tried to help others in my community. At the same time, my son was very violent and aggressive, and in 2016, CPS wanted me to terminate my rights because they were afraid he was going to hurt me. And at that time is when I luckily discovered cannabis. And the plant really did change his life and our life too. So he was originally got his card for nausea and migraines, but I noticed that it really helped his autism. It helped his violent and aggressive behaviors. So in 2018, I petitioned the state of Michigan to add autism as a qualifying condition for medical marijuana in our state, and we succeeded in that. There are currently 112 minor patients in the state of Michigan that are receiving medical marijuana through the autism diagnosis. And I would like to say that autism is 1 out of 35 children nowadays. And back in 1998, it was 1 out of 10,000. So it's definitely very prevalent nowadays. And I really feel the reason that it was so important to do my story is because cannabis allowed my son to stay at home with us. And I want other parents to feel comfortable and to look into it as a viable option for their child that has not only autism, but any type of extreme or severe diagnosis that is treatable with medical marijuana. Now, I'm currently working on Jaden's Law, and Jaden's Law is to allow access to the minor patients while they're at school. Currently, I have to drive up to the school and park 1,000 foot away from the school, walk his medication in, and walk in, sign him out of class, and take him back to the car to hand him his capsule. And then I can drive him back and sign him back in. We have had medical marijuana legal in our state for minor patients since 2008. So we're in 2023 and it's well overdue. There are currently 10 states that have some type of legislation to allow the access of cannabis to minor children while at school. So hopefully Michigan will be the 11th. And I just want to say how wonderful things are now that cannabis has changed his life. My daughter is now 23 years old and my son is now 16. He's going to be 17 this year. And he became like me, and he is now an advocate, which is really super exciting. It hopes to help improve the mental health care system, and he also advocates for medical marijuana because he knows how important his medicine is to him. I don't want to tell too much of what's in my chapter because I'm hoping that you guys all purchase a digital copy for $2.99. For the next 3 days, you can do that. So please do. And I am just very grateful that I had this opportunity. The journey that we've been on has been very horrific, to be honest. For 10 years, I tried to get my son help, and I spent more time fighting with the school and the hospitals and even police officers. My son was in residential treatment for over 300 days of his life. So it was very extreme. And, honestly, it took a while, even after cannabis. He started when he was 9. And I didn't even tell anybody how well he was doing for at least a year, because I kept thinking it was like a pharmaceutical, like it would have that honeymoon phase is what they call it, where, the medication, like, oh, it's working really well. And then 2-3 weeks, a month later, it's not. And so I was very leery on, like, okay, it's working great, but how long is it going to work for? So I did wait like about a year before I put anything online about how well he was doing. But yeah, he's been on it since 9 and he's now 16, and he just keeps getting better. He is no longer cognitively impaired. His IQ has went up, and this kid can process things like you wouldn't believe. He blows my mind. And he hits milestones that I never thought he would hit. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch. And writing my chapter, I had to relive a lot of the pain that we went through and a lot of the experiences. And I'm so grateful that life is so much better. But I still have a lot of healing to do, to be completely honest, because of what a traumatic experience that it was. So we're both healing and growing and advocating, and things are very well.
I was driving along on a beautiful sunny September day in my semi-truck and trailer. I was pretty happy about my day so far because I was loaded lightly with tires and I was going home. I'm driving a stretch of road that's under repair, and the requirements for truck drivers are to drive in the left-handed lane alongside a concrete barrier. The path ahead was smooth, even though it was busy. All of a sudden, the truck in front of me hit the right lane. The truck in front of it had hit its brakes in order to get its second trailer under control. Checking my surroundings, I saw a small Volkswagen convertible with 2 people out for a ride. I decided then and there to hold my lane and pray that I was able to stop in time and not hit the truck in front of me. I hit my brakes hard, just enough to bring me out of the seat and nose close to the windshield of my tractor. My seat belt had been adjusted with just enough room to give me space in the seat when I drove, and to keep me from going out through the windshield. Ramblin' Rose was alert and prepared for the day. My seatbelt saved me and snapped me back into the seat after I was rear-ended by the truck behind me, still going nearly 55 miles per hour at impact. That was nearly 20 years ago. It took me a long time, lying in bed or on the couch, fighting the fact that I was now going to be disabled. I found out that I could not heal, regardless of how many prescriptions I took, regardless of how many protocols I followed, regardless of how many physical therapy appointments or how many messages and massages I received. I was not able to heal. I was told that I would never get better, that my days of rambling rosing were over. And now I have diabetes, and I have endured over 20 surgeries. It became difficult just getting through every day. Some days, all I could do was exist, lying around in bed or on the couch, sometimes just barely making it through that day. Sometimes I would pray for the end of my existence to escape from my thoughts and inescapable reality of pain. Getting through sometimes just for the kids, the grandkids, and for my dog, Mercy Nary. Sometimes my only joy came from attending music festivals when I could and being able to dance, if I could. As a former medical assistant student and wannabe registered nurse, I believed everything I was told until my medications became more harmful than healing. The side effects and allergic reactions, coupled with roommates stealing, led me to a natural path of holistic healing. I am Michelle Nary, known as Mother Cannabis, the Stoner Tribunary. A tribunary is defined as a people protector or a champion. I help people do their best to protect themselves. I help others find their canna courageousness. I'd like to quote Robert Hunter and Jerry Garcia and some of their verses in Ripple. There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and the dark of night. If you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripple in still water, when there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow, you who choose to lead must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. I don't really know the way. I will try to show you the way, sometimes by showing you what not to do. I found my path of self-protection. I have had many encounters with clinicians that have both helped and hindered my healing progression. I found my can of courageousness in these encounters. I've had to explain many times that I was not a drug addict. I once had a surgeon refuse to give me an elective surgery because of my cannabis use. I had to prove to him that I knew my medical rights and that he was denying me mine, so I fired him. I have since had the pleasure of working with one of the finest neurosurgeons in the country. My lumbar spine has been totally fused. I left the hospital using Tylenol and my cannabis in one or more forms. When I did leave, I was able to climb the stairs and walk laps, as well as dress myself. I am kinda courageous when I deal with people who tell me I'm wrong or that I smell like a skunk. Not that my medical business is also their business. I am kinda courageous by constantly talking about the flower, also known as my medicine, also known as the plant, to anyone and everyone that will listen. I was kinda courageous when I was interrogated by my local police sergeant after finding me with a small amount of my medicine. He took my Tangy, as it was his right. I went and got more, as it was my right as a medical cannabis patient. I live in Ohio. Some days the laws work, most of the time they don't. I apply the plant topically, I utilize cannabis orally, and I am also using cannabis for the calm, peaceful, and pain-killing effects that it has on my body and mind. This euphoria helps to keep me free from the daily fear of pain. I am kinda courageous every time I tell any part of my story. There are many parts to my story that I cannot speak about yet. My hope for the future is that people will stop being afraid to discuss their cannabis needs and uses with their medical clinicians. They're only there to help you. The father of cannabis research, Dr. Raphael McChulam, said, "I believe cannabinoids represent a medical treasure waiting to be discovered." He also said the endocannabinoid system is very important. Almost all illnesses we have are linked to it in some way or another, and that is very strange. It is strange. My hope for the future is legalization federally, and that every university has a cannabis research program. Be kinda courageous like Dr. Raphael McChulam. Be kinda courageous like Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams. Be kinda courageous like me and many other people. Some you're learning about today. More you will read about in our book. Be a ripple in still water. Don't be afraid to tell your truth. Thank you.
Didn't know before. This is so amazing. The power truly is in the stories. So thank you to our authors for participating today. And you are now complete graduates of our Speakers Bureau. But congratulations on your work, on your speech, on your chapter that we have now finally made it to launch. So congratulations, authors, for incredible, incredible, heartfelt work. Thank you to our audience for being here today and participating in our journey and our mission. Thank you, Nurse Heather Manis from Cannabis Nurses Network, for manning this and being behind the scenes. We will go over to the session room here in a moment. But before we move, I want to make sure that I say out loud, thank you to our sponsors. The Cannamom Show, Joyce was here with us today, Vibe Cannabis Centers in Michigan, Compass Natural, who's also our marketing team, Spender, getspender.com. If you're in the cannabis space, you have to know what they're doing as far as helping with payment issues. Superbs, also in Michigan, Data Digital Marketing, Cannabis BPO, of course, Sandy Moore of Hempbox, etc., who is also one of our speakers today, the Ohio Medical Marijuana Physicians Association, Believe 614 Visual Media, and the Columbus Botanical Depot. Don't let this be the end of your journey. Get the $2.99 ebook right now, and also join us tomorrow for our pre-launch party on Cannabis Courage in Can books on Facebook Live. And if you're in Ohio, join us at the Columbus Botanical Depot. And you will not be able to get away from us on Monday. We will be on platforms everywhere you look, celebrating and talking and really, being a part of this amazing book. If you want to know where we are, go to courageandcannabis.com. You will see a link that says important links, and you will have that will be our link tree, and it'll list all the platforms with a link to go directly to them, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern all the way to 8 p.m. Eastern.